So I'll call the meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole for Monday, September 21st, 2020. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Squamish Nation Traditional Territory, Highlands, Quist, Taliknamat, Tla, Squamish, Umwemwe. Can I have a motion for the adoption of the agenda? Councillor French and Councillor Herford. Everyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And we are on to business, so I will hand it over, I think, to Mrs. Gunn.
Thank you. Good morning. I was going to say Mayor and Council, but sadly we don't have the Mayor with us today. My name is Dora Gunn. I'm a transportation planner, and I'll be speaking at a number of the stops along the way. Also speaking at several stops are Jesse Morwood, our Capital Projects Manager, and Laura Princik, our Municipal Engineer. There are several other staff here too who may also speak, but I'll let them introduce themselves at that time. So the first stop today, we're going to be talking about Perth Drive. So I'm just going to point us down that direction. So Perth Drive is one of our major collectors in a residential area. These have been specifically identified because they will be carrying higher volumes of traffic. They're designed for passage, so getting folks from point A to point B. But a number of these major collectors in residential areas don't have very good active transportation infrastructure on them, and that's needed to keep people safe on these major collectors. So Perth Drive does have a shoulder that people use for walking and biking, but that is it for its active transportation infrastructure, except at the very bottom. So next point, 1 second. Oh yeah, so we've been looking at Highlands Way North to do some traffic calming on Highlands Way North. And if we do that, we expect that it could shift some traffic over to Perth. So that elevates the importance of improving the active transportation infrastructure on Perth even more. So improving Perth is a really large and expensive project. And so we've decided that for 2021, we need to have a concept design for Perth to give us a sense of exactly what we're planning to do. And then we can start to implement it piece by piece and know that what we're doing will fit in with the bigger vision. So that's what's planned for 2021, a concept design that will include active transportation infrastructure and also hopefully narrow the road a little bit to lower the speed of traffic as well. And then if budget permits, we hope to start to implement just a little bit of it in 2021. So that could look like potentially creating some narrowing at a couple of the intersections to lower speeds, as well as to create a safe place for pedestrians to cross. And that is it for me for this stop. Does anyone have any questions?
Councillor Race?
And slightly off topic, but Pitlochry right down there, and that's where we were talking about one of the possibilities for closing.
Yes.
Right at that intersection, more or less?
That's exactly right, yes. And so that would push traffic onto Perth.
And Dora, the reason to do that?
The reason to do that is, thanks Jesse, the reason to do that is that, so Pitlochry as well as Highlands Way North, just past that, it's a local road, but it actually has higher traffic volumes than Perth. So we're trying to shift that balance so that we have the higher traffic volumes on our major collector, which is the intention, and then lower traffic volumes on our local roads.
Thank you. I understand the shift in the vehicular traffic that's intended to happen, and will likely happen when those changes are made. Wouldn't there be a similar shift of the active transportation traffic the other way? And then I wonder how those two pieces sort of interplay, and if there's other experiences with this. So we're putting our active transportation dollars in the place that has the most effect.
Through the chair, yes, we have been contemplating that. And so as we go through the concept design process for Perth, we're going to be looking at what space availability we have, as well as cost considerations, and thinking about maybe we only need sidewalks on Perth, and maybe we focus most of the bike traffic on Highlands Way North and Pitlochry. So that's definitely in the thought process. We haven't made a determination yet. We'll do that as we go through the design process.
Jesse?
Sorry, can I follow up too? I mean, there's also a big node of residents that live on that side, and they need to go to the school as well. So even if a lot of the pedestrian and cycle traffic moves to kind of the local roads, there still is a good amount of traffic on that side. So we need to be able to accommodate and provide safe access to the school. Thank you.
All right, to Jesse, when you say this side, are you talking about up Thunderbird Ridge, or are you talking about just this side of Perth, or the Kintyre bench?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I'm all kind of, let's say, the east side of Perth. So there's a Thunderbird. There's residents and a community on that side, and again, they need to get to the schools to this side of the road, and so that's why we need facilities on Perth.
I mean, I live up on that side, but there's only really one way down, and that's Thunderbird Ridge. And if you accommodate on Thunderbird Ridge, and then you cross the road, and you're more or less right at the school, so you don't have to kind of come up into this area, for example, to service that group of people up there. Just a thought.
Yeah, sorry, we'll respond to that. No, I agree. There's different parts of Perth, right? There's around the school. If you're there during the day, there's a lot of ped and cycle traffic around the school going to and fro within a few blocks there. Certainly this part of Perth is a different animal a little bit, and so I think you need to look at each segment kind of as it's being used.
Oh. All right, I think that concludes this stop. So the next stop is on Perth at Portree. So we're just going to bike down Perth down here and then meet up again on Portree.
So call recess.
You're in charge.
Back to order after recess and hand it over to Mr. Morwood.
Great, thank you. Jesse Morwood, Capital Projects Manager. So we're on Portree Way, and I'm just going to talk about this project we did in 2018. Effectively, it's a multi-use path. It was identified, the issue was identified during the school travel planning about safe drop-off, pickup, as well as kind of neighborhood access to the school. So we built this multi-use path. There was a lot of constraints with this project. One certainly was the property we had. As you can see, there's driveways and houses and properties, and there is room over here, but to move the whole road is really quite cost prohibitive, so we kind of worked with what we had. It's a raised multi-use path. We decided to do that to give a bit more separation for kids that were on the pathway. Some of the challenges we had around this was all the driveways and the different elevation grades. It was quite kind of hard to make that work. It's as a user, you kind of go up and down, and some people like that and some people don't like that. I think kids find it quite fun, but it's a little bit slower if you're kind of commuting along. We also used asphalt instead of concrete. That's partly for cost, as well as it's easier to maintain. Surprisingly, it's easier to rip up and take and put down. And yeah, we also had to put drainage in. You have to add drainage when you put in a curb. The water has to go somewhere, so that's an added cost to doing a raised kind of curb and gutter system like this. And overall, I think it's quite effective. We left a bit of a parking lane that was kind of identified as important, as well as that cars can, parents can drop their kids off in this kind of parking lane, and then the kids can get onto the trail. We've had, I think, pretty positive feedback about this project overall. So, given our constraints and given our budgets, I think it was a successful project.
So how much cheaper is it? I know sidewalks are expensive, but how much cheaper is that than the concrete equivalent, approximately?
Yeah, through the chair, 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's quicker too. So there's often challenges around scheduling or weather, and it's an easier product to deal with.
Jesse, 50% for the sidewalk component, but not for the drainage component, correct? Like that?
Yeah, I think the question was concrete versus asphalt surface, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Similar to the question of we were talking about earlier with drawing traffic, this looks great. It's very appealing as a safe way to come into the school this way. The approach to it, however, and I think this highlights our issue on Perth with, just coming in from the east. Is it just assumed that on the way in they're coming in the schoolyard through one of the neighborhood side trails versus coming up the road with no shoulder and then onto this bit?
So, yes and no. Many children do enter the school through those side trails, so that does alleviate the problem somewhat. We would ultimately like to have a safe path on Perth as well, though, because people come from all directions. You can't always predict exactly. I'll just maybe mention the location. So the next stop is going to be on the boulevard, right near the roundabout, right near where that bus shelter is. So we're going to go down here and then stop on the boulevard.
Now we're in recess. Okay, and we're back from recess, so I'll pass it back to Ms. Gunn.
Thank you. So at this stop we're going to talk about a lot of the Highlands Way corridor. So from Portree by the school where we just were, and then all the way down to the bottom of the hill. So we're planning to do another concept design for this corridor in 2021. Doing the concept design gives us a cost estimate. It allows us to plan for how we want to implement the changes. And it also helps us to be able to apply for grants. So that's a lot of the reasons why we do these concept designs. So I'm going to talk about each little part separately. So the Highlands Way North portion over to Portree, we talked about that in council a little while ago. We looked at some options. One of the longer term options that related to active transportation was either a protected bike path on one side or some other configuration. So we're going to be sorting that out through this concept design and as to what would work best there. The bike path could also potentially, depending on how it's designed, contribute to reducing traffic speeds as well. So we'll be looking at how we can do that. And then the roundabout is the next part of the concept. So the roundabout functions relatively well for vehicles and pedestrians, but not so well for bicyclists. And so we'll be looking at how we can improve those connections for cyclists coming up and down from the Highlands. And then the third part of the concept is to look at Highlands Way South, the hill. So this was actually identified at, there was a cycling infrastructure night that was put on by Squamish Can in September of 2019. And it received the highest number of votes as far as the problem area goes. So that really, we already knew it was a problem, but that even elevated it more. So on the uphill side, there's a sidewalk that everybody uses to bike up because there's nowhere else to bike. So you're interacting with pedestrians there. And then on the downhill side, there is a bike path, but it's a really terrifying narrow bike path. It's really unsafe. And so we'll be doing concept design to figure out how we can possibly improve the cycling connection up that hill. I'm just going to pass it to Jesse for a second to talk about some of the challenges there.
I'm not going to talk about too much, but there's not a lot of space. It's kind of a common theme through a lot of our projects. There's not a lot of space that we have available to kind of cost effectively build infrastructure. So one of the things that we will look at is there is a traffic passing lane on the way up, and so we will look at the opportunity of converting that to a multi-use path. As part of that, we'll do traffic studies to look at whether reducing the number of traffic lanes can still kind of accommodate the traffic in this area. And then we'll look at any other options that present themselves. So this fall and winter, we'll be digging into that.
I was noticing in the RFP that's current, and I believe it's for this area, that you're requesting from the people submitting to present options. And my question is really, how will you engage the public in reviewing those options that the potential contractor will be putting forward? Will you rent some space and have some physical opportunity for the neighborhood to have a look at these options?
Thank you. So we honestly haven't gotten to that stage yet. What we're trying to do is develop the options, and then there will be a process after that we will determine in the future as to how we're going to do that. So I'm sorry I don't have a very good answer, but we will work hard to engage the public as we can, yes.
Thank you.
See any more? Do you want to let us know where we're going next.
So the next stop is going to be down a bit of a ride this time, down on Mamquam by Diamond Head. It'll be a short stop there.
Okay.
At the bus stop?
No, we're going to ride down the really... Okay, you have a choice to ride down either the really scary narrow bike path slowly or on the road.
Okay, we're in recess and we'll see you there. Race you to the bottom. And we're back. I'll put it back to Mrs. Gunn. Mrs. Gunn.
All right, folks, we're getting going here. So I actually chose this stop to talk about the bike path connection here on Mamquam, but now that we're standing here, I realize there's something else I can mention too. It's hard to hear, sorry. So we were just riding along a pretty good bike lane there on Mamquam. Same exists on the other side. So it's really quite good, this section, but as soon as you hit Diamond Head to the highway on this side of the road, there is no bike lane. So it's a big missing section. So in 2021, we're hoping to fill this in. There'll be the bike lane retaining the parking on the road, so there'll be a bike lane and parking for this block, and the next block, just a bike lane and a travel lane. The bike lane will ramp up at the corner there near the highway so that you can attach the corridor trail or use the crosswalk infrastructure. I'll also just mention that the project that we're standing on right now is also one of our projects. This is actually a kind of a joint active transportation fund and transit improvement fund. So we connected the sidewalk which existed over there, over here to the well-used bus stop right here and created a bus pull-out there as well. That's it for me for this stop.
Councillor Harford?
Thank you. This is a great piece that needs to be done. What about the further east-west connection on Mamquam Road west of us here? Where does that rank in the priorities of the active transportation plan?
I'm really excited to announce that our next stop we're going to be talking about that, and it ranks very high.
Councillor Race?
So is there any, this is all road allowance, I think, where you see the shrubbery out to the road, I think is part of a road allowance. Is there any talk about upgrading Mamquam and allowing for more infrastructure, like active transportation infrastructure?
Chair, so there is a very wide road allowance here, you're right. It's huge, actually. It could be a whole park. So we do look at that, think about it, but so far doing anything with it hasn't risen to the top of the priority list. There are some people have kind of extended their yards onto that, so it would require some removal of people's yards there. It's a tricky one, but definitely an opportunity for the future.
I'm just curious, you mentioned here we're going to try and retain the parking and the bike lane, and I know that we piloted on and around the business park the location of parking relative to the bike lane. So I'm just curious if you can speak to our current thinking on that and how we perhaps navigate that in this space.
Sure. So this whole section of bike lane is an unprotected bike lane. So our current plan is to continue it as an unprotected bike lane on the traffic side of the parking in this particular location. The reason to put it on the inside is if you're trying to create it like a all ages and abilities protected bike lane. At this point, I don't see the need to do that here, given that the rest of the part of it is not like that. So that's the plan.
One can imagine that this area, because of its flat terrain, close to shopping and so on, and how it may evolve in terms of suites and the residential massing, that it's going to be a popular place for seniors. My question is, are there any design considerations in accommodating for electric chairs and these sorts of things that are coming along in plans for this area? Say Mamquam, roads like this through the... And is this something that might be taken up in a neighborhood plan that we might be looking forward to in the next year or so?
Through the chair, we have not discussed that particular item specifically, particularly in this area. Accessibility is a consideration we always put into every project that we do. And over time, the width that we are requiring for sidewalks is getting wider and wider, which is going to make it easier for electric wheelchairs. But certainly every time we look at a new project, we do take accessibility into consideration.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think there's more and more awareness around seniors and the specific concerns and needs they have. And so like Dora said, there is kind of a body of knowledge about you're really trying to do all ages and abilities. But I also think as part of that, there's more and more awareness around what seniors need. For example, more benches on part of the route, so they're able to walk a little bit, sit down, and then walk a little bit more. So that's evolving, and we're evolving with that as it happens.
Can we assume that the active transportation will be very much featured in a neighborhood planning process that will come along here? And it is already, I suppose, in the terms of reference for a neighborhood plan?
Chair, so the engineering department and myself, we work with the planning department on their neighborhood planning and are always involved in that process and provide input onto it. So I would say absolutely yes.
Just expanding on Councillor Anderson's question, what are our current assumptions about speeds and types of devices on trail versus roads and how that mixes?
So that is an evolving point as well. It's actually something that is on my task list to look at is consideration with so many people purchasing e-bikes, and we want to encourage people to purchase e-bikes. We are probably going to have to expand the required widths of some of our trails, particularly multi-use paths, because then you have e-bikes interacting with pedestrians. So that's on the list to do in the near term, is have a really good look at that and decide if we need to change those widths in our subdivision and development control bylaw and other places. All right, so I think we're done here. The next stop, we're gonna bike down Mamquam, cross the highway, and then we are going to stop in front of Willow Park on Mamquam Road. What was that? I missed it. Is there a bench? Probably.
Okay. All right, we're in recess. See you there. The meeting back to order and hand it to Ms. Gunn.
Mr. Morwood. Yeah, to me. Thank you. So to the earlier question, this is actually improving the active transportation facilities on this corridor from the highway to government. Next year is a priority. So part of that RFP that's out for design right now and closes in a week, this is part of the scope. So what we're aiming to do is effectively build a multi-use path on the north side of the road, and then a bike lane, an on-street bike lane on the south side of the road. So the multi-use path would be a raised curb and gutter project. This has been kind of identified as a project for a number of years. The reason that it's kind of got top to the list this year is that there's a bunch of other capital works that we really need to do here, and so we're always trying to kind of coordinate all our works together. Just a quick note on that, the really impetus is our all the development up in kind of the university area is putting taxing on our sewer system. So we have to put upsize the sewer system all along here. Also the asphalt's in bad condition. So we really, on section of this, we want to repave. So it's really great timing as well to do all the active transportation components of it. Some of the unique challenges here is there's existing infrastructure as always. There's lights that may be in the way. There's power poles that's certainly on the far end. And there's an existing sidewalk that's maybe not in the right location. So, in order to build a multi-use path, you need to kind of expand one way or both ways. So the sidewalk's potentially in the way. We might have to move the whole sidewalk. Parking is in a lot of places is an issue, and here as well. So trying to accommodate the parking and build all of is a key goal. The district actually has quite a lot of property here, but residents have built out into the property. Those hedge line, that cedar hedge line you can see is actually in district land. So how we deal with that going ahead is one of our challenges. And as part of this project, we will have public consultation, certainly with the local neighborhood at least, about some of the options that we'll develop. Thank you.
I can think of a few other multi-use pathways that we have since built, trying to accommodate light posts and and then your light posts end up in the middle of your multi-use pathway. I'm just curious how we address that in like forthcoming projects.
Yeah, thanks for the question through the chair. You know, it's this balance of cost and utility, and we're always kind of weighing that with all our projects. We're really trying to get away from it. You know, I think you've seen, certainly with Dora and I, the last kind of light post in the middle of the trail. That's not what we do. Hydro poles may be another thing though. Hydro poles are prohibitively expensive to move. We're talking tens to a lot more, thousands of dollars, and it's really not just expensive, really challenging sometimes to actually accommodate it. So certainly, again, we will move all light posts. We're not going to have light posts in trail. Hydro poles can be really challenging, so no promises on that.
Why are they challenging? Is it provincial regulation? Is it BC Hydro just has their way of doing things?
Yeah, it's cost. Cost in real estate. Like, for example, on this specific project, the pole that's in the way is actually a support pole for one of those large pole you can see. They're on this side of the road where we're going to be building the multi-use path. There's actually a support pole. You can't see it, but where does that support pole go? Like, you can't necessarily move it to the middle of the road. We're right up against property lines, so and to do that, it's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars to move a single pole. So physically, just physically, the realities are really challenging, and our budgets are always a challenge.
See any more questions, Ms. Gunn?
All right, so we're going to move on to the next stop then. I'm just going to point out one thing though before we do. The trail that heads north here, we're going to take the same trail heading south over there. It's called the Railwoods Trail, and it actually provides a great connection all the way up to Mamquam School. So we're going to head that way, and we're going to stop when we hit the dike, just down at the end of that trail there.
Okay, and we're in recess.
And we're back from recess, and I'll toss it back to Ms. Gunn. Oh, there's a question.
They're having a chit chat.
Oh, we're back from recess, guys.
All right, so we just biked part of the Railwoods Trail, and we're going to now connect out to Government Road and then cross the Mamquam Bridge. So this trail alignment is mostly on district right-of-way, and it provides the potential to extend the Discovery Trail on the other side of the bridge further north as an all ages and abilities trail. So this is kind of a longer term plan, is to connect the Discovery Trail at least as far as Mamquam School along this trail, and then hopefully further, even all the way to Brackendale in the future, although the alignment still has to be determined for that. So now as we start to head this direction, there's a few awkward connections that we have to make. When we hit Government, we're probably going to have to backtrack a tiny bit just to get a safe crossing across Government. Ultimately, if we do create an all ages and abilities trail, obviously we would upgrade that connection in some way. And then I'm going to pass it to Laura to talk about the next awkward connection.
You mean the intersection?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, Laura Princik, I'm an engineer with the district. So once we hit Government Road, the only sort of safe option is to cross the road and then head down either the shoulder, of which there isn't much because the bridge gets very narrow. And then once we get to the intersection with Centennial or Loggers, depending on how you think of it, I'm a little bit confused as to which streets those are named, at the end of where Government connects to Government. That will become the new Pioneer Way eventually in terms of a road access, but for now it's a fairly awkward cycling access. You sort of have to come around the corner and then cross over onto what's called known as the old highway, but will eventually be fixed. That intersection we'll be looking at very closely to determine what's going to be the best way to configure it. It'll go from a 3-way to a 4-way, and it'll need to either be stopped or traffic light or a roundabout. But that is yet to be determined. We'll be working with transportation experts to figure that out. And we'll obviously be going to the public and letting them know what the options look like and all that stuff too, and getting costs.
Great. So any questions about this? Okay, so the next stop, then is going to be, we're going to go down the Discovery Trail. So once, one of us will probably have to lead this section because it's a bit complicated. We're going to head down the Discovery Trail, and then we're going to stop where the Discovery Trail intersects with phase 1 of Pioneer. So one of us will go there, and we'll stop at the right spot.
We're in recess. We're back from recess, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Morwood.
Thank you. So we're talking about Pioneer Way construction. So what the plans are here in the immediate and near future is to upgrade Pioneer Way to a paved 2-lane road that connects from Queensway to the Centennial Government intersection. For this year, we're focusing on Queensway to approximately where those barriers are. And the cross section of that section and the whole road is going to be, in addition to the 2 traveled lanes, there'll be a multi-use path on this side of the road. So it's going to be on the south and then carry along on the east side of the road. And then on that side, it's going to be a separated a sidewalk and a bike path. For this year on this project, we're just building the multi-use path. We're not building that side of the infrastructure because there's no development yet that's happened, so it's an unnecessary cost. Certainly when these lands are developed, then we'll look at upgrading. We're dividing the project into 3 phases. First phase, like I said, is that section you can see. Second phase is the one we're on to Aspen Road, which is an intersection up there. And the third phase would be continuing to the Government Centennial intersection. The reason we phased it is for budget and for utility. So budget is, what we had, the money we had for this year would get us to there. For the next phase, it's partly to do with the development that's going to happen in the future, and then the third phase to connect it to government, and that's part of our traffic intermodal study. Is we want to get the industrial and heavy traffic onto this road away from the residential neighborhood.
So we've had a fair bit of discussion about multi-use pathways, and we've also received a fair bit of feedback to council from folks who feel like bikes and pedestrians on the same pathway doesn't feel comfortable for either party. So I'm just curious where we lean towards like a multimodal pathway that has both bikes and pedestrians versus bikes separated from.
Thank you. So we are, when possible, trying to separate the user types. Sometimes we have a space constraint and we can't do it. For this particular project, we need to have a multi-use path on the one side so that the Discovery Trail connects properly, so that's the rationale there. And on the other side, there's going to be a bike path for this direction of travel and a sidewalk as well. So we separated them on that side. So it's more, we try to separate as much as we can, especially in a higher use area and where there's space.
So I have a question. Just looking at the Sandman, you can see that's the back of the building. As we go forward, and maybe there isn't just that many properties where this is an issue anymore, but are we thinking about, what all sides of the building look like?
So that's almost more of a planning question that I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to answer very well. Maybe Gary, you can speak to that one?
To be honest, I couldn't quite hear the questions about the back of a building, but I couldn't catch the rest.
Well, yeah, just looking at here, see that's the back of the hotel and the development is. Are we starting to think more, and again, maybe we're developing so much by now, we're past the point of having to think about it, but thinking about what all sides of a building look like when it goes up, even if there's not someone next to it today.
Yes, more so. I think the mud zones that are across here are indicative of that. So yeah, we are thinking about that more than we used to.
All right, so the next stop is going to be at the highway and industrial, and it's probably going to be very loud. So it's going to be a tricky one to manage, but that's where we're going to stop and we're going to look at a project there.
Next to Tim Horton?
Yes.
Okay.
Although we'll stop on this side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in recess. We're back from recess, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Morwood.
Thank you. Just a quick note as we're going by on this project. What we're trying to do is we're trying to facilitate better access across industrial effectively. So how we're doing that is we're widening the trail to the highway. Previously, a lot of cyclists were in our riding right across the road, which is kind of unsafe to do. So we're really trying to build a better facility to get them to the highway. As part of this, we're also going to put up a fence to really kind of discourage cyclists from riding directly across. One of the main challenges, this project has been working around water. This is, I don't know, fish-bearing stream or a sensitive stream, let's call it. So there's very kind of limited regulation around when and how you can work around the stream. So that's been the main challenge with this project.
All right, so the next stop's going to be on the Discovery Trail, just a little ways down here. It'll be at the start of the paved section.
I'm just curious because as we push cyclists to get to the highway, I understand the rationale for it. It's not very safe to cross directly. I have been known to do that once or twice. But I feel like that corner with cars coming off and merging also feels extremely dangerous. And I'm so just curious if we do anything in terms of like traffic awareness, that there is like, I don't know if we emphasize the crosswalk or what happens there, but that has always felt like a pinch point to me.
Through the chair, yes, I 100% agree. It was sort of there was a bunch of not great options, and this is the best of the not great options. We did look at trying to have people go this way across, but due to MOTI, we would have had to go quite a ways that way, far enough that I think people would have figured out a way around it and not done it. So we decided to go with this. As far as what additional treatments we can do besides widening, we did look at adding additional lighting, and that still could be possible in the future. Yeah, Jesse, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's hard to build infrastructure around highways with fast-moving vehicles. It's always the main challenge. There will be, the fence will prevent that cross traffic. It's also going to help separate, to some degree, vehicles from pedestrians. Certainly right at the crosswalk, yeah, I think that's a concern. That's a valid concern. We will pull the vegetation back as far as we can to improve the sight distance as best we can. And I think at the far side we're looking at future lighting. And potentially we could do it on this side too, but it's a challenge.
Sorry, where are we going next, Ms. Gunn?
So just down the Discovery Trail, we'll stop at the north end of the paved section. Just that way.
So we're back in recess. Call the meeting back to order and give it to Mr. Morwood.
Thank you. So we're talking about the Discovery Trail upgrades here. So our future vision is a 3-meter paved pathway separated from traffic where applicable, as well as lit. So we did this section of pathway last year. The lighting is actually expected to be kind of installed in the next month or so. There's been COVID-related delays with that, so I'm really looking forward to that lighting going in. The other piece that for this project that went in is fiber optics. So the district is connecting its own fiber optics network between all its main facilities, and the trails are our main kind of corridors, if you will, for the fiber optics. So we're putting those in as we go. We've been phasing the project, so obviously last year we did this. We're going to connect the south section, I think, next year. That's going to go from effectively to Dentville to the high school is kind of our aim right now. That's what we're working kind of schedule. And then we will be moving north as well. Again, 3-meter paved lit pathway in the near future. I think in the next few years we'll be starting to move this pathway north to get that 3-meter paved lit pathway.
Thank you. It was on one of these bike tours, I think it was 2 tours ago, that we had a discussion. It was down at the other end of this trail, coincidentally, down closer to the high school, about whether to pave it or not. And paving adds I forget the exact numbers, but it's a significant cost to pave versus the surface like I'm standing on, sort of the crush. Have we come to determination about that? And I had experience in Whistler when I lived up in Whistler and I was on the Parks and Rec Commission up there. We paved the Valley Trail. There was a bit of debate, but then we paved it. And almost immediately there were conflicts at that time, and this is going back to the 80s, between pedestrians and bicycles, and later on rollerbladers. And there were actually collisions and people hurt and stuff like that. And so have we given any thought to that, and have we had these kinds of conflicts, or are we thinking of, is that the model for the whole rest of the trail system?
Maybe I'll start, and then I think maybe Dora probably has some comments. So we've talked about all ages and abilities. The corridor trail and discovery trail are going to be our active transportation highways. And paved surfaces facilitate that. They're really good for all different users. Some users won't go on the gravel, and so we think for those main collector highways, it's really important that they're surfaced. I'll pass it over to Dora for.
Yes, so that is the current thinking. That is also the recommendation in the active transportation plan. So for the Discovery Trail and the Corridor Trail to be paved, lit corridors. On this side of the highway, there's also the option for cyclists wanting to go really fast to stay on government. So we're planning to maintain those bike lanes on government for the confident on-street cyclists.
Yeah, you can go right through the middle. It kind of proves the point we're making here.
And sorry, so the second part of your question, I think, was about...
Just go for it. Just go for it.
So, yeah, I mean, occasionally we have reports or complaints of conflicts. My personal opinion is that this used to be a very small trail that was dark and I think discouraged a lot of people from using it. Especially when the lights come, I think we're really encouraging users to be on it and use it as an alternate mode of transportation. So, I think there will be some conflicts, and that's inevitable. It's inevitable on any of our roads as well. So, it has not been a major issue. I think if there was a very, very high demand for this, then I think that would increase. But right now, I think there's a lot more benefit to doing what we're doing than not.
So there's a lot of interconnectivity between here, Queensway, and all the intersections through to Pioneer. I noticed that the Pioneer request for proposals includes signalization of that intersection. Is commercial way pre-wired for traffic lights?
Great question. I don't know. I don't think it is. We're pre-wiring it as part of this. We're pre-wiring industrial as part of this project. So based on that, I doubt a block away it's pre-wired. So it's probably not. Certainly, as there's development, we'll look at it. But I don't think there is at the moment. It isn't.
All right, so we have one last stop. It's a bit of a bike ride from here. So the next stop is going to be at the south end of the Hunter Place Trail. So perhaps we're good to go. Great. So one of us will lead the crew down there. We have one awkward crossing to make near Jumar. But other than that, we're pretty good.
Okay, we're back in recess.
We're back from recess and back to Mr. Morwood.
Thank you. So we're in front of the Hunter Place Trail. We're calling the Hunter Place Trail. This trail came out of a safe routes to school need. A lot of the school kids from Ballycliffe trying to get to Squamish Elementary and Nicole Elementary there. We found that Pemberton was kind of the route, but it was kind of a circuitous route and it didn't have great facilities. So the purpose of this facility is to get school kids under the overpass on Pemberton and then to the school. As well as the concern was kids crossing the highway. So this is why this is here. It's actually kind of unique in that it's actually a temporary trail at the moment. We're on a yearly lease with future developers. So this is a temporary trail that we do plan on making permanent in the future. And I'll let Laura talk about the development.
Yeah, so as well, just of interest on this block, these properties here are currently under a development proposal, and so there will be the opportunity to improve this frontage to actually have sidewalk in, and then whether exactly it'll look like in terms of a multi-use path or a cycle track as well, we're still working on early phases of that design. And
maybe I'll add to that. So Pemberton is a main active transportation corridor. This year we're putting in 30-kilometer signs, and there's new bike sharrows in the middle in the road that are behind us. In the future, like Laura said, we are going to connect or improve the active transportation infrastructure all along here to 3rd Ave, I believe, is the future build-out.
And this connects to the corridor trail under the underpass and through Rose Park. So that's ultimately this connection to downtown.
There is a scenario of a multimodal transportation hub over here near in the vicinity of the BCR or the hydro substation, one of the places I suppose being looked at. My question is, on the other side of the tracks there's actually an old truck road, and it's buried under blackberry bushes, and it was a trail until not too long ago with a little bridge across the ditch there. My question is there some consideration to secure a route like that? I think it's probably split ownership, but thinking long term about what we might do on the other side of the tracks, because the waterfront landing folks are going to be coming from the other side of the tracks too. So I'm thinking about long term whether there's some consideration to identify that roadway or right of way for future considerations, especially if the hub is going to be there.
Yes, I mean there's a lot of different, like there's obviously the hydro substation. Are you talking about between the hydro substation and the track?
It's actually between the highway substation and this road here. The trucks used to dump logs on the other side of the tracks, and so there's a road right on the other side of the tracks that goes between Cleveland and Pemberton.
I don't actually know too much about that road.
It's probably not legal, but maybe we should make it legal.
But I think the fact remains that it's our intention to make sure that there's a proper facility along loggers that will connect in some way through that entranceway area, which is under study right now, to get you to the top end of Cleveland, to the Hunter Place, shopping area. And yeah, so no, obviously with any future plans, we're always considering active transportation and how to get proper sidewalks and or multi-use paths and or cycle tracks.
Councillor Stoner?
Just wondering if somebody can speak to how we envision from Cleveland to the elementary school with Jumar there. So we just experienced that coming this way. And it was a little bit awkward for the cars that were turning right, and obviously there was a lot of us today, but that intersection of folks coming this way, and then also like appreciate that this helps kind of divert traffic that way. But then what happens once kids on bicycles get to kind of that Hunter Place intersection and across Cleveland?
Yeah, so, sorry for the chair, we're being a little informal here today. So ultimately Jumar is going to be building a cycle path along their frontage along Buckley. So then all that's left is sort of from Cleveland and Hunter to the end of this path, which right now is a fairly quiet street. It's a dead end. I mean, it does lead to the shopping center, but it isn't too crazy, but we would like to see a multi-use path continued the whole way along there, but we may have to work that into our own budget, just given that there isn't any kind of active development or things going on there. So, but yeah, we're definitely aware of it. We want to make sure that connection all works. And then we cycled down the path, obviously, along the soccer fields there by the school, so that path will continue all the way along that Buckley frontage in front of the new building to Cleveland.
Councillor Anderson?
I just noticed this gentleman with the dog has just come down that little trailway down from the highway sidewalk, which was originally intended to be for pedestrians to get up there from the underpass, and it was phased out because people were running across the road and cutting a hole through the fence. But my question is there an idea to improve that connection between those two levels? Is that in any kind of a plan?
Yeah, through the chair. We did look at it a few years ago. It's a very low priority at this moment based on all our other active transportation priorities. The reason why it's low is it does. We are concerned about it encourages people to run across the highway. as well as it really right now does not serve that many people. There's a few businesses down there that it serves, but there really is, it does not serve a larger user group, and that's why it's low on our priority at the moment.
The new bridge that's under discussion, the vehicle bridge, what kind of capacity for active transportation are we thinking about for that bridge?
That's a good question for Dora.
Sure. So there's a plan to have Laurelwood on the far side connect across the bridge with a multi-use path, right across that bridge, and then it'll join in here and head across on Pemberton.
Will it be a standard width that we're talking about now in our current standards?
Yes. So the multi-use path will be one of those 3-meter paths, and then there'll be a sidewalk on the other side. So we're planning to have both separated from each other. Yeah, and then it connects all the way up to the Valley Cliff and Hospital Hill parts of the corridor trail as well. So.
Sorry, new topic. Dora and Laura and I work a lot on the active transportation stuff, but I wanted to introduce you all to Josiane Waugh. Josiane Waugh is part of the capital group in the engineering and does a lot of work and helps with a lot of the construction aspects of it. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew who she was and thank her for all her hard work in helping build this infrastructure, including the one right here. So, thanks, Josie.
So, Ms. Gunn, what's next?
So that's the end of the tour. Now we just have to get ourselves to your lunch, which is going to be at Stan Clark Park. So the plan is to ride along Pemberton and then down 2nd, so on the road.
Okay, so Councillor Race?
Well, I was just wondering, is this the end of the meeting then?
Yeah, I was going to sort of thank everyone.
Can I just say one thing super quick? Most of you had a chance to meet him, but we Jeff Wint is our new Outreach Sustainability Coordinator. Who's going to be doing the work on transportation as well. So those of you who had a chance, this is his first day on the job, so thanks for joining us, Jeff, and we're really excited to have you. Sorry.
So I'd just like to thank everyone quickly for this. You start to sometimes buy into the idea, well, Squamish is spread out, we can't do active transit really, and I think every time I go on one of these tours or on our trails, I realize more and more, actually you can do a lot with active trails, and it's really exciting to see what you've done and what we are doing, so thank you very much. And that'll call for a motion to terminate. Councillor Stoner, Councillor Hartford, all those in favor, anyone opposed? Oh, it's time to get some lunch.